Hello and welcome. My name is Russell Trafford-Jones and thanks for joining me. This is Broadcast Focus, the show where we look behind the scenes of broadcast, the media and entertainment industry by chatting to the people that make it happen. It's a small independent channel, so thanks to everybody who supports it by liking, subscribing and of course watching. We cover both technical and non-technical topics, so as long as it relates to media, it will be here. Now, recently I spoke to fractional CMO Georgina Verdonk about her journey through a career, both mentoring and being a mentee. We talked about finding mentors, company-owned mentor schemes and industry schemes such as Rise. But that touched on an important boundary. What's the difference between coaching and mentoring? Well, to look into that question and more, I'm very pleased to welcome to the show Sabina Bunger. Hello, how are you doing?
Hi, thank you for having me. I am a career coach. I predominantly support women in working in media and tech. Coaching in its simplest form is helping people work out where they want to go and then helping them get there as fast as possible than they might on their own. Another saying that I quite like is that it helps people imagine even greater possibilities for themselves, which is something I like.
I like that too. But you spent a long time in broadcast before becoming a coach on the technical side. So what is it that happened that made you feel, actually now what I want to do is I want to coach people and help people in that respect?
So I think it was a mixture of things. Yeah, a long time is correct. I was in the media and tech department for 19 years. I started off as a broadcast engineer and I kind of moved through the departments into kind of IT. I recognize now, reflecting back, that there was a thread of self-doubt through my career, which I would mask by collecting qualifications. And one of those was Cisco qualifications, which is how I ended up in the network team for over a decade. And then I moved into managing the network team and more qualifications in management. And during that time, I really enjoy kind of dealing with people and the different departments in tech. So that fulfilled that passion in me. And within that, I learned about coaching. And I recognized that despite what others might think, I had a successful tech career, but I felt something was missing. So a couple of years ago, I had a personal loss that made me reevaluate what that meant for me. I took a career break, and within that time, I looked into coaching. But initially, I looked into it to kind of get over my own self-doubt and recognize that I didn't want it to hold me back in whatever I did next. But during the training, I realized that I really liked it and that I'm quite good at it, even if I do say so myself. I do have testimonials that will agree. And so for the last year or so, I've been doing that. And I find, because of my experience, women who are working in media or tech or in those technical roles enjoy talking to me because they don't have to explain the context. I get it. I know what it's like. I've been there. So I guess I became the coach I wish I had, because when I was in my roles, I didn't realize that was an option for me. I didn't really know the depth of what coaching could give me. I was aware of mentoring, and I did have a great mentor.
So, I mean, that goes straight on then really to the crux of the matter. You wish you, like, retrospectively looking back, you wish you had a coach. And I think looking back, I could probably say, oh, I wish I had a mentor, but you had a mentor. So first of all, what is the difference for you between mentoring and coaching?
For me, the difference between mentoring and coaching, so coaching is non-directive in that we don't give advice. We will have a thought-provoking conversation. I will ask questions to get the client or the coachee thinking, which will bring new insights, which will facilitate growth. Whereas mentoring uses the expertise of the mentor to support the client. I know as we kind of move forward that some mentors have a foot in both camps. Coaching helps the client be in the driver's seat, so they will come up with solutions themselves as what works for them. Whereas mentoring, a mentor will say, well, this is what I do, that what I did, might this be useful for you? So I guess mentoring for me is using the mentor's expertise, whereas coaching allows the coachee or the thinker to come up with solutions that work for them. In this day and age, the information is out there. We know the solutions that work for us. It's about allowing time and making space for them to come up in busy schedules, we don't do that often enough. And also, I find, I don't know about you, but I don't like being told what to do. So if somebody suggests things, it might not be right for us.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that there's going to be a difficulty, obviously, if you're creating questions and creating thoughts. There's thought-provoking and then there's leading as well.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, do have the sense that it's better if the person comes up with themselves, partly because I think it makes more sense. I could suggest something to someone else and it would seem prescriptive in a way that I didn't intend, or it wouldn't kind of latch. But if they came up with that same idea, we might really end up having exactly the same idea, but we'd both describe it differently. So in terms of that mentoring, then, I guess from what you've said, where somebody's leading by example, usually their own, but they perhaps have a wider network so they can bring in other solutions from other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that really, to me, speaks to why it's practical for a business, for instance, to have a mentoring scheme, because effectively you don't need to be trained in any significant way to be a mentor. Whereas coaching feels to me like there's more process behind it and more thinking, and therefore there should be a little bit more training on part of the coach. Do you think that there's a need for coaches to be trained as opposed to mentors?
Yes. And I can reflect back on my own experience of when I was a manager, and especially when you're working in kind of fast-paced, time-sensitive industries like broadcast, it's easy to delegate or tell people what to do. And through my coaching training, I've learned that I am disempowering the person, and they might have better ideas.
Sure.
They might have more creative options if they're given the time, space and time to think about that. Because coaching is an unregulated industry, anyone can call themselves a coach. So I do think it's important to have that training, because you learn about yourself. So I constantly have to be coached to make sure I'm not polluting the space and leading, as we previously mentioned. And there are governing bodies that kind of help with the structures. So I think that helps. And with mentoring, I think it's nice to have a structure for mentoring, and companies provide that. But because we are learning from a mentor's expertise, training I don't think is as necessary.
Yeah, indeed. And obviously there should be, ideally there should be some training just in general how to do mentoring the best. That's not to say that it's not without merit. So with a mentoring scheme, let's say within a company, what would you say that, let's say there's a relatively recent graduate, first 5 years, they've benefited from the mentoring scheme either for the 5 years or for some of those 5 years. What would you say coaching might give them extra or different? What kind of things would that allow them to do that perhaps that mentoring scheme hasn't brought to them?
So one of the differences between coaching and mentoring is that mentoring can be more of a long-term relationship, and coaching is more of a short-term relationship. So it's working on goals. So this individual that we're talking about, they may have goals to want to build on their self-trust, build on their self-belief, or they may want to work on their public speaking skills. There'll be a goal they want to work on, and then we will explore the possibilities. We will explore why that's important to you and how you can go about it. So that's what can help with that. But the main outcome of coaching is evoking awareness. So the individual might have ideas or beliefs about themselves that they have to progress in a linear fashion, or they may have to do something before, they might have to do X before they get to Y. Whereas the coaching situation will allow them to explore those possibilities. I have seen with my clients, and I know that in the broadcast industry, that perhaps I'm making generalizations here, but that women in broadcasting want to come to coaching to work on their confidence, work on how they feel, self-belief, self-trust that they should be there. Whereas perhaps some men in broadcasting go to learn about self-awareness, viewing things from multiple perspectives, because there is a focus in broadcast to work on our technical skills. So I think coaching allows for that extra dimension.
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of people say that, don't they? It's almost a cliche, I guess, in many technical industries, whether it's software development or otherwise. I just want to program. I just want to do Chrome frames. I just want to do my technical stuff. I don't want to have to be a manager. And some people, on the other hand, find when they are given that opportunity and it becomes natural, or perhaps they are made to take that opportunity, nonetheless, they find a benefit in that. And I think perhaps what you're saying is that that point would be a good coaching opportunity for them, just so that they could actually explore that skill.
Yeah, I would also counter that actually coaching helps people thrive in their existing roles. So I too have found many people who, I've worked with colleagues who love being technical and have no desire to manage people. And coaching will help them in their existing role, because if they've been doing it for a while, or even if they're new to it, they may be missing out on what other perspectives can bring to their current role, and allow them to be more creative in that. And coaching can foster collaboration, agile workplaces by taking in that information. So I think it's important to reflect that it can affect the current day job and not just progression. And this is just my opinion, but I wonder some businesses may be reluctant to kind of consider coaching because they think that it's all about career progression, and that, if we do this, then we have to have that path, or people are going to leave. And that's not necessarily always the case.
No, indeed. So, I mean, as you say, though, the whole point of coaching is to come with a challenge. I'm trying to, I mean, you might be wanting to change job.
Yeah.
Otherwise, but you might just be trying to deal with your own job as it is. Perhaps the demands on you are too high. So, I mean, have you seen things along those lines? What kind of things have people come to talk to you about?
So in my experience, I've had clients come to me because they've had job offers, and then the choice that kind of hits them with that. And I've had several clients with that. So one might be that there were 2 job roles and one was moving into management, but actually that didn't feel like it was aligned, but it's the pressure that they feel that they should be moving to progress in their career. And actually having a coaching dedicated space to think about that and work out where they want to be in 3 to 5 years, what's important to them. And as we mentioned before, talking about success, redefining what success is for you. So when I was growing up, success for me was working in London, having that successful career, and I got there and something was missing. So I had to pause and then work out what success was for me at that point. So with this client, we do the same thing. You work out what they want and which aids that, and actually listening to what's right for you now, because what might have been right for you 5-10 years ago isn't necessarily the same. And I've had other clients that decide whether they should follow the money or pick the one that's going to allow them to work on their creative passion. I think when we work in time-sensitive, high-pressure situations, you don't make that space. So you think you have to decide quickly, and sometimes space and time is what's needed. Other things I've seen for people building their existing role is dealing with the workload or overwhelm they might be feeling, how to prioritize tasks. I had one client that came that had wanted to work on managing their workload. They tried several things and it didn't work. They felt like a bit of a hamster on a wheel. So we looked at things that had worked that might not necessarily be about prioritization. It might be, okay, well, how do you deal with technical tasks this way? What makes that useful for you? And that allows them to take something from a different part of their life and implement it that works for them. And, I recently heard from them to say they'd made progress and they were feeling much more focused and productive. It's a wide variety. I've had managers discussing kind of team dynamics, how they've got difficult relationships, but exploring that relationship allows them to look at how they might be contributing to what's happening, or think of other possibilities of tackling things. What else? I've had clients that are balancing career ambition and parenthood, working out how to juggle that and what's right for them. And also career transitions. So we find people leaving the industry either through choice or through burnout, and dealing with that in a healthy, productive way. And I think it's important to point out that the theme is allowing people to work out what's right for them, but also helping them, giving them the tools so that they can make those choices themselves for other options further in their careers.
Sure. Yeah. I think there's a couple of those that very much stand out as ones which really need to be part of coaching rather than mentoring. Choice of money versus creative outlet. It's not one that it doesn't really matter what someone else did. It very much matters what you need to do. So I think it's a good way of looking at it. So within a company that has a mentoring scheme, does it make sense? Do you know of companies that have what we could just, for the purpose of this conversation, call a coaching scheme? Do you know what that might look like? Because it's so personal. It's not like a mentoring scheme where it's, well, everybody comes in, goes through it for a year, and if they want to stay around, they can. What's your feeling about that?
Well, it would be silly of me not to say that the company should get in touch with me and I can help them. But aside from that, I think there are internal coaches and there are external coaches, and there's benefits to both. Sometimes people may not feel that they can be as open and honest if it's an internal coach. So what might that look like? What we find is that you need at least 3 to 4 coaching sessions before you begin to see change. I like to work on like a 6-session package. And so companies could offer coaching for 6 sessions for their employees to work on a particular goal. And maybe it could tie in with performance goals. So if somebody wants to improve their speaking, or if they need to be more aware of others, it could be something they go to that. But it's really important that the employee wants to make that change. You can't force them down that aisle.
No. It would be like having a retained coach internal. So like if you need to go and speak to the coach, then you can, and presumably zero cost or something, whatever the company comes up with.
So that's an option, but you could allow employees to get coaching themselves and the company subsidizes it. There's lots of options. So there are companies that have internal coaches or they hire in. And it's worth mentioning, everything that happens in a coaching session is confidential. So in 3-way contracts, so you will contract for what is happening. The line manager and the employee can be involved, but the coach doesn't repeat anything. But the conversations that can happen can aid the employee to discuss with their line manager what's come from that, if they wish, and that can help them build better relationships and help them with their performance goals.
So is there a question of education, as in awareness of coaching, which needs to be answered? I mean, with respect to mentoring, with the success of Rise, albeit an advocacy mentoring scheme, it's helped people just say, oh yeah, mentoring is quite a good idea. I'm very pleased that that's happened. Is there something which should be happening on the coaching side?
So I think one of the things that we come across is that people don't really understand what coaching is if they haven't experienced it or if they don't know someone that has been through it. A lot of people with no experience come to coaching thinking that they are going to learn the answers from the coach and are often surprised when they find that it's a conversation and that the coach does 20% or less of the talking.
It's not a lecture.
No, definitely not a lecture. So I think it's about showing people what it is, how it can be helpful. And I was thinking about this, it's about making it accessible, making it available, and making it acceptable. So companies should be allowing their employees to have that coaching session during working hours if it is aiding their employment. They should make it easily accessible, either via schemes or by providing a selection of coaches that they could access, and making it acceptable. I think some tech departments are forward thinking and see that it is a benefit, whereas others may be like, it's not a technical skill, how's it going to help? And so discussing that and making it acceptable, I think, is maybe one of the hidden challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I imagine it would be at a company level. So let's say it's a broadcaster, then obviously there's plenty of technical departments there, but it's a broadcaster-led thing. So within that department, I guess management has to come to terms with what it is, but nonetheless, it's there. However, that kind of ignores the number of smaller companies within the industry. Some of them are very technical companies. That's the whole and raison d'etre. So effectively, probably from a management perspective, there is that kind of thought for the whole company, like, well, is it really needed? Is it really necessary? So, well, hopefully we've covered some of the topics needed to help them come to terms with the idea. Thanks for spending the time with me to look at the differences. I've appreciated your input, so thanks for joining me. I just want to say big thanks to Fiona and Becky, who helped very much keep this show on the road, working behind the scenes. If you have watched this far, I'd love you to make sure you click like on the video. Sabina, I've really enjoyed talking to you, and thanks for helping me extol the virtues of coaching and make sure I know the difference between that and mentoring. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.